Learning a language can be really fascinating and, of course, very difficult when you are just starting to try to learn that language. And, of course, it's hard, it's not easy. And there are so many people who can speak multiple languages, which makes it very interesting. And that's how I felt when I first left my country in Africa to travel to China. The very first time I was leaving my country to go to China, so many people were worried about the language problem. And that's what so many people all around the world feel worried about when they are thinking of moving to another location. And of course, that's a real fact. So many people have this problem every time when they think about moving to a new location. And that's one thing that holds many people back from traveling. And I realized that during my travels and experiences all around in different countries. Now, when I first got to China, I couldn't speak the language. I think the only part of Chinese that I knew was Ni Hao, which I saw online, of course. And when I got to China, I was like a novice in the language. I knew nothing, just the Ni Hao. I got to the airport, struggled, and I'm glad that there were a couple of people who could speak the language, and that really helped also. But then, along the line, as I began to try to adapt in China, it was so hard because the language problem made it very difficult for me to be able to buy food stuff. For example, when I went to a restaurant, I couldn't order food for myself. When I went to any location, even to get a taxi. One funny story. One time I took a taxi. I didn't know where I was heading to. I called a different name. The driver took me, went around, came back, dropped me off across. And I was shocked. I was like, really? I turned around, I looked, that's where I started, that's where I ended. It was so shocking for me, but then that's one advantage of learning a new language and experiencing new things. And fast forward to today, I learned so much that before I left China, I could interact with so many different people, at least basic communication, understand what people were saying, and I could also say what I wanted to say. Of course, it didn't take a day, it didn't take a month or only a year. It took quite a while, but I'm very happy that I finally succeeded to be able to learn and communicate in the Chinese language. And I believe that from the time when I got into China to the time when I was leaving China and up to now, there are so many steps and tricks that really helped me to be able to learn the Chinese language much faster. And one first tip that I would tell you guys watching, if you are thinking of traveling to another location to maybe learn the language, try to adapt, the first thing is about embracing the culture. You know, one thing I've realized while traveling is that before you can learn a language, you must be able to accept the culture, understand the culture. It doesn't matter where you are going to, how far it is, how many people speak that language. If you are ready to embrace any culture, then you can try to start learning that language. Of course, as time goes on, you will try to learn more and it will just grow on you. It's very normal. It takes time. And that's the second tip, patience. Learning a language requires patience. You can't just learn a language today and start speaking the language today. Normally, there's a saying that you can't plant a tree and harvest fruits of that tree the same day. And that's the same thing with learning a language. Learning a new language requires patience, requires consistency. Now, talking about patience, you need to be able to understand that learning that language, the beginning will be very tough. It will be very tough. And you need to be calm, take your time, learn word for word, one word after the other, and with time everything will fall in place. So it might take a couple of months, it might take a year or two, but when you start, you need to understand that even if you get frustrated at some point, you need to be patient. That's very important. And of course, patience goes with consistency. If you are patient when learning a language, you need to be consistent. Don't just give up before you can reach your goal or your target in learning a new language. When you start learning a new language, it's hard, it's difficult, and so many people give up along the line. I think I've seen many people, I even had many friends, even in China, when they started learning the Chinese language, at some point, they just gave up and they made about 3, 4, 5 years in China and they still couldn't speak the Chinese language. And I think that's because they gave up so soon and they were not consistent. Of course, I am still learning. Reason why I believe that consistency is key. When you are patient, you accept the culture, then you can start to do your best to be consistent. Make sure you try to learn as much as you can, as regularly as you can. And another aspect that can help you is to try to watch Chinese movies. Try to watch movies with subtitles in Chinese language or Italian, Portuguese. Well, thanks to websites right now like Netflix, they have options where you can subscribe and of course have subtitles of different movies in different languages. So that really helps everyone to be able to learn many different languages at your own pace, at your own convenience. And the more you learn the language, the more you watch these movies, the more you can learn, the more you even listen to music, because music also helps. When you watch movies and you listen to music, you can learn so much. There's a Chinese song I learned, her words I cheng do the day. So these songs like this, for example, it really became part of me while I was living in China. And I believe that embracing this culture and learning the language really helped me to be able to understand these songs. And of course, learning the songs and watching movies with Chinese language subtitles really did help. And what I can say is that this video is not just about learning Chinese language alone. It can apply to many different languages: Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, French, German, and any language you want to learn. You can apply these same tactics to those languages and it will definitely help. Now, when learning a language, I believe that you need to focus on grabbing the basics, because I think when you are learning a language, most languages in the world actually, just about 20% of every language is used on a regular basis. It's used like 80% of the time. The day-to-day language, the day-to-day basic communication is just like 20%, but you need to be able to learn these basics before you can learn some more. For example, if you go to the grocery store, if you go to get a taxi, if you go to have fun, go to a bar or restaurant, just the communication right there will help you to be able to grasp as much as you can. If you're in another country and you have maybe a Chinese restaurant in your country, or a Mexican restaurant in your country, or an Italian restaurant, you can go there sometimes. Try to interact with the people working there. I think that will really work, and that really helps you to be able to learn so much more. And that has helped me, because while I was in China, I used to move around, and as I moved around, it really helped me to be able to interact with people and learn as much as I could on a daily basis, of course. Now, the truth is that learning a new language can be very boring, of course, for so many people, and very tedious to start learning. But I realized that we can learn a language from everywhere. You don't even need to go to the country where the language is spoken to be able to learn that language. And this is very possible because when I was in China, I had a friend. When I was in China, I had a friend who was from Romania. She couldn't speak English when she got to China, but when she lived in China, she learned English and she could communicate in English, and then she learned Chinese, all in China. Reason why I believe it's very possible to be able to learn any language anywhere you find yourself. And for those who are trying to learn the Chinese language, because I've been seeing in the comment section of many of the videos on this channel, many people asking every time how I learned the Chinese language, or how do I learn the Chinese language, or how long did it take me to learn the Chinese language. The truth is that there was a tip that I realized along the line while I was moving around, speaking to Chinese and trying to learn the language. I realized that there were some words in Chinese that were quite similar. Well, first of all, there's the tones. That's the ah. If you can grasp these tones, it really helps you to be able to understand how to pronounce your words in Chinese language. And of course, one other tip which made it really easy and helpful for me to learn the language was the fact that Chinese language is like two words put together to form another word. You take one word, you put it together with another word, and it forms a new word. For example, so in Chinese language, for example, there's dian yin, dian now. Dian shi, Dian, Dian dong chi. So these are like electric. Dian means electric. So they take the electric and they join it with other words to form different words. For example, Dian ying, Dian now computer, Dian ying movies, Dian dong chi electric cars. So it's something electric. So I think if you can learn Dian, then the other words you start putting them together, and with time, before you know it, you'll be able to learn the language and even speak much better than you could expect. And that's why I said it's also about patience and consistency, because consistency and patience helps you to be able to learn much faster. And before you realize it, you'll be speaking a new language in no time. And another amazing aspect that can really help you to learn a new language are the apps that we have today, technology itself. Today there are so many apps, uncountable number of apps like Duolingo, Google apps, and many different language apps that can help you. And it's actually designed like a course where you do it daily or you do it weekly. Those really help. It doesn't matter what language you are trying to learn. There are so many free apps that you can download in your phone, in your mobile phone, and you can learn there daily or weekly, or just learn at your convenience. And using all of these apps really helped me a great deal. And of course, it also helped my Romanian friend who learned English language in China, because I was surprised when she could speak good English language after a while. So I asked, but how did you learn English language? Did you come here speaking English language? And she was like, no, I learned English language in China. So how amazing it is for someone to learn English language in China. That alone should help you to understand that you can learn any language from anywhere you find yourself in the world. It just takes consistency and patience. And she told me she used mainly the apps like Duolingo, which really helped her, and of course watched a lot of movies, a lot of English movies. So when we put all of these points together, we can realize that learning a new language, yes, it's hard. It's very hard to learn any new language. It doesn't matter if it's Afrikaans, Italian, French, English, Portuguese, Spanish. Different languages have different tones, of course, but then you can definitely learn these languages if you want to. And I think that the most difficult part of learning a language is the start. When you start to learn the language, at some point you realize that everything has gotten easier for you. And that's because when you are starting, you just learn everything. You learn the basics, you learn the alphabet, you learn the pronunciations, you learn the tones. And as time keeps going, you realize that you can now form some words, you can make some sentences, you can even move around and use some of the words at some points. And again, just remember that it takes patience, it takes time. Well, there are many other tips that I'm going to share with you in subsequent videos, but if you want to see more amazing videos like this and get more tips about traveling and learning a new language, and of course so much more which is to come on this channel, feel free to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Just remember, learning a new language needs you to keep an open mind. Learn the culture, learn the language, be patient, learn as much as you can, and that will definitely help you. Remember, this is Willen. See you next time.